We've all got that one sin that we just can't seem to get rid of no matter what. Like it just keeps on coming back. Well, that one sin, it's like a bottleneck. It's kind of just choking you out, stopping you from reaching the potential that God's created you for. The thing is, God created every single one of us with a potential to reach, and he sees us as this potential version of ourselves because it's who we were really created to be. For example, Gideon was hiding in fear when God called him a mighty warrior. And Peter was called a rock when he was the most unstable apostle. But both Gideon and Peter ended up living up to their titles because it's who they really are. They just hadn't realized their potential yet. You and me are no different, but standing in the way of you reaching your potential is sin. You can't reach your potential if you're living in sin because it's restricting the Holy Spirit from transforming you. From looking at my own life, I've found that there's 6 principles that will enable you to destroy your bottleneck of sin and to unleash the potential that God has created you for. I truly think that these principles, that if you follow them, that they have the potential to absolutely change your life. But the thing is, they all kind of work together. So if you're actually serious about killing your sin, stick with me to the end. The first principle is you need to acknowledge that it's actually possible to defeat your sin, to be free from it. Galatians 1:4 is speaking of Jesus and says, who gave himself for our sins to rescue us from this present evil age, according to the will of our God and Father. I don't know if you guys realize how profound this is, but this just clicked for me like a week ago. This is talking about Jesus rescuing us from sin right now. I usually think of, Jesus died for my sins. That's great. I have salvation. I'm not going to go to hell when I die. I'm going to go to heaven. But I never think of it in terms of like, Jesus died for my sins now, like right now. His purpose on dying on the cross was not only to glorify us in heaven, but also to free us from sin right now. So if you truly take hold of that and believe that, that's going to be huge in beating your sin. And if you're a true born again believer, you're a Christian, you're not like these guys on self-improvement who are just relying on their willpower and these cheap strategies to overcome sin. You have the power of the living God inside of you to overcome this, and it's his will for you to do so. Just let that sink in for a second. The second principle is kill your pride. Humility is the key to success. Pride is the original sin of Satan, right? It's what caused his downfall. And it's also the original sin of Adam and Eve. They thought they knew better than God. It's really important for you to understand this is the original sin because it just shows how important it is to kill it. Some examples of pride is like saying, I know better than God, or I can do this in my own strength, or, I can put myself in this tempting situation because, I'm better than that. I won't fall. But the reality of the situation is you're not better than that. None of us are better than that. And you really shouldn't trust yourself. You should recognize that you're a wicked sinner, me and you both, and that we need God. We should put our trust in him, not in ourselves. Don't put yourself in a bad situation. And so with all that said, what is humility? Why do we want humility so much and not pride? Well, the definition of humility is it's the freedom from pride or arrogance. It's the freedom from pride or arrogance. So this implies, pride and arrogance, it's literally like a handicap. They're chains being put on you. It's limiting you from your potential. And humility is also, it's like a right view of self. It's realizing who you really are. Pride deludes you. When we're humble, we realize that we're powerless against sin. We realize that everything we have is by the grace of God and that we don't actually deserve any of it. It's realizing that every single breath we take, we're reliant on God. There's a Bible verse about Jesus holding things of the world together. I like to picture God's literally holding our bodies together. They would fall apart. This universe would fall apart if God wasn't holding it together. So it's really important, if you want to have victory over sin, you need to recognize that you're completely powerless against sin in your own ability. But with God, you can do anything. You can do it in his power. So you need to humble yourself before God in prayer. And some of the most biggest breakthrough moments I've had have been when I'm on my face on the ground praying to God, just humbling myself before him, realizing how much I need him and how powerless I am without him. And then he provides me the strength to go on. The third principle is meditate on the deadliness of sin contrasted with the goodness of God. biblical language concerning sin is very serious. Like, it talks about, sin, it brings death, it brings destruction, it brings corruption. It just destroys everything in its path. And it talks about, like when dealing with sin, it talks about crucifying it, like gouging your eye out. Yeah, these are figures of speech, but still, like, the point is, God is saying, you need to take sin really seriously. It is not a joke. It is not a joke at all. So I got this from a teacher named Paul Washer, who's really good on this topic of sin. I would really recommend going and watching some of his stuff. But I'm going to kind of summarize a take he had on this James passage. Basically, when we're being tempted, Satan is offering us a counterfeit. He's offering us a counterfeit of God's good and perfect plan and gift he has for us waiting, if we just trust and wait on him. And the thing is, when we give in to temptation, it's like we're trusting Satan over God. And that sounds crazy, but it's really not. Think back to the very first sin of Adam and Eve. When they chose to eat that apple instead of trust God, what were they doing? They were choosing to trust Satan over God. God is good, and you can trust him. Like, God himself is love. He has something so much better waiting for you. But the thing is, the only way you're going to really understand the goodness of God is through diligent Bible study, and particularly studying like the attributes of God, finding out who he really is. So if you're not already like in the Word and you're not studying the Bible, that's like the very first step. Like, you can't expect to have victory over sin if you're not learning about who God is and what his will is. The more you get to know God, the easier it is to trust him, and the more it builds your faith. The fourth principle is pray without ceasing. And I just had this revelation, if you want to call it that, like a week ago, and it absolutely blew my mind. It's so simple, but it goes like this. God is powerful, right? We all know God's powerful. And God uses prayer. We know that too, right? Well, if God is powerful, God uses prayer. Prayer is powerful. Like, whoa, dude. Like, prayer is literally us tapping into God's power, to his infinite power. And it's God's will for us to have victory over sin. We already know that through what we went through earlier. I mean, there's so many verses in the Bible that indicate that, but that's just one. So if it's God's will for us to have victory over sin, God's powerful, God uses prayer, why aren't we praying all the time? Why haven't I been praying all the time until I just started to realize the power in prayer this year pretty much? We should be praying all the time. We should be praying before we're tempted. We should be praying during temptation. We should be praying after temptation. We should be praying when we wake up, in the middle of the day, before we sleep. Like, it's literally tapping into God's infinite power. That's crazy. So we need to be utilizing this in every way we can. If prayer is like really this powerful, which it is, like we just logically concluded that it has to be. So you need to be asking for prayer about your sin from your family, from like your friends, close friends, from Christian friends, from your pastor, your church members. You need to be asking prayer from as many people as you can. You use everything at your disposal. And the fifth principle goes along with this. Be open, be honest, and be specific about your sin with those you're asking prayer from. You need to really cut to the bone. You can't beat around the bush and be like, oh yeah, bro, I struggle with sin sometimes, like pray for me. Like, that's not going to help anybody. You need to really lay things bare and get to the root cause, be open and honest with them. Because it's not going to help anybody if you're just being super vague. But, obviously you do this with people you trust. And then I'd also recommend getting an accountability partner. But the thing is with this, I really don't think accountability partners work if it's just with a buddy. Like, I don't think there's anything on the line for you there. And you're not really going to hold each other accountable because you're like, well, whatever, it's just my bro. Like, it's just my buddy. There's nothing there. Like, you need some skin in the game. Like, to give you an example, I'm at a Bible college right now, and guess who my accountability partner is? It's the dean of students for my school, who's one of my favorite teachers, who I look up to. Like, that's I have a lot on the line there if I fail. And to clarify here, I'm actually not talking about having an accountability partner, but more so of like an accountability mentor. Like, this is a one-way thing. You're going to someone who's older than you, who's more spiritually mature than you, who's had victory over whatever it is you're struggling with. The benefits to doing it this way are, number one, it acts as a deterrent to stop you from sinning because you respect this person. Number two, this person knows what it takes to have victory over your struggle, so they can like actually exhort you. And number three, they can pray with you. Like in James, it says to confess your sins to one another, and the prayer of a righteous man is effective. Well, you know this person is godly, and so their prayer is actually doing something when they pray for you. I have a verse here, Ephesians 5:8 says, "For at one time you were darkness, but now you are light in the Lord. Walk as children of light." The more you have things out in the open and laid bare, the more people you let in on this journey with you, the easier it's going to be. It's really like counterintuitive. Naturally, as humans, we don't want to do this. We want to keep things hidden. We want to keep things in the dark. And that's our sin nature. And Satan plays off that. That's what Satan wants. He wants you to keep things hidden in the dark. That's where Satan operates. He operates in the darkness. And God operates in the light. This can make such a huge difference when you're letting more people in, when you're bringing things to the light and the open. It's really powerful to getting victory over sin. And the sixth and final principle that brings us all together is rely on God, but do your part. So, we've went over all these things. Humility is key. God is, it's God's will for you, victory over sin. Prayer is powerful. God is powerful. All this stuff. But guess what? If you just walk away from this video and you have this head knowledge, it's completely worthless. You just wasted your time. I wasted my time, because my whole goal with this is to actually help you guys have victory over sin. Otherwise, it's pointless. You have to take action on this, and you have to actually put it into practice. You need to step out in faith in God's power and His strength, not your own. A really powerful but simple illustration that's helped me understand this concept of, doing things in God's strength, but also putting our foot forward is walking. So the Bible talks a lot about, walking with God or walking in the Spirit, things like this. And it's the perfect illustration. I mean, think about it. Every step you put forward, what's going on there? Well, you're putting every foot you put out in front of you, you're putting faith in that foot, in that leg to hold you up. And you have so much faith in that because, you've done it. You've been doing it since you're like 2 years old. So you're like, well, it's not going to fail me now. So you walk without even thinking about it. Well, it needs to be the same thing with God. You need to be putting that foot forward, trusting that He's going to hold you up. And guess what? It's God's will for you to have victory over sin. So you can trust God even more so than you can trust your leg and foot to hold you up when you're walking. It's this concept of putting feet to your prayers. You're stepping out in faith. So this is what Paul means when he says, walk by the Spirit and you will not gratify the desires of the flesh. Like, you play a part in this. You have to take action and put your foot forward. But all the power behind that step to hold you up is coming from God. Any power over sin is coming from God. So just remember this one saying, active dependence. This is all about active dependence. You are actively depending on God, and that is what walking in the Spirit means. That is how you're going to have victory over sin. So to bring this all together, you can shatter your bottleneck of sin if you acknowledge that it's possible, if you kill your pride, if you meditate on the goodness of God contrasted with the deadliness of sin, if you pray without ceasing, if you're open, honest, and specific about your sin with those close to you, and if you rely on God and do your part. I can't even describe to you guys how much better my life is since dealing with my ongoing sin. And I'm aware I can still fall at any moment, but the thing is, I've kind of seen the other side now, and that momentum has helped me just go and go and go and go. And I'm reliant on God every day to give me that victory. But like I said, you got to do your part. Like, you have to deal with it now. This will ruin your life if you let it. It'll absolutely just rot you to the core. It'll rot your life, your loved one's life, your family, your future wife. It'll ruin your relationships. So my challenge to you today is to actually take action on this, not to just go do something else after watching this video, but please go take action on this. Pray to God right after this. Go let other people in on this journey with you. Tell your family, pastor, a close friend, get an accountability partner. Like, take action on this right now. You got to deal with this now, or else it's never going to get dealt with and it's going to ruin your life. So don't let it. Don't let it. It's up to you.